Okay, so hopefully this will be a bit of a kind of walkthrough, talk-through guide type deal. I'll do my best to talk and run through it whilst maintaining a decent kill per hour. Just kind of explain what I'm doing, thinking as I do things. Hopefully it'll be a bit interesting. Sorry, just changing quick pairs a bit. Hopefully you guys find it interesting, and you might learn a bit of situational DPS type stuff. So there I just forced foam, even though it was really bad. Kind of sucked a bit. Here I ran out of good abilities to use, so I used anticipate so I could force an auto attack and a rack. I can rack because my Dreadnought stunned Magister, so it gets boosted damage, so it doesn't lose any damage. I'll explain some basic mechanics. There we go, it stunned him again, so I can just rack again. Then I can asphyxiate to keep him stun locked so he doesn't auto attack. One thing about Magister is he spawns minions if he lives long enough, and that's based off that's based off how many auto attacks he does. So he won't actually spawn minions if he doesn't do enough auto attacks. So if you're doing less DPS, you say have worse perk gear, some slight different stats, you don't have tier 99 prayers, you might want to consider stunning him more so that he heals less, or rather he doesn't spawn minions, because they really do wreck your face. Not much of a way to say that. So I lost a tick there while resin because I just mistimed forcing him to attack, but there he's doing his range hit, so I can spray range. You can tell he kind of charges his staff down. Well, he puts his staff down onto the floor, he kind of charges up and there's red mist. He won't be doing any magic attacks during that time, so you can tell he'll do his ranged attack. It's kind of telegraphed. At first you might miss it if you're concentrating on other parts of the fight, but in general it's pretty easy to notice and avoid. So I failed to force my Vuln there, but that's okay. I was just trying to make sure I got my wild magic off inside my sunshine rather than wasting that. It's better to waste 10% DPS than 50. That's how I think of that one. I've got my Dreadnought so far. Lost a tick waiting for combust, but I expected that. Overall, it's kind of fine. When he does asphyxiate, it's 100% accurate. It will always hit the same amount. It will always hit for the same hit as the first hit, unless you change your protection pairs, so you can anticipate how much damage you're taking. And the damage he heals is based off the hit he would have made. Whether you pray against it or not doesn't actually change the amount he heals. I am somewhat tired. It is 2 AM, so my commentary may not be the best, and nor may my DPS. I just literally lost 2 ticks there. But I'll do my best. There, he's doing his charge. I can res more or less losslessly. I didn't impact into asphyxiate simply because that can change CC. Impact lasts long enough to make to use another stun with it, and it will actually keep the stun going. But you can impact into rack and have it actually boost the damage. It's too short of a stun bind. One way you can actually get that to happen though is if you stall impact outside of your attack range. So you'll stall impact, go back into your attack range, and then use rack instantly after, and that would actually boost it. So it's kind of fun. I usually use impact into deep impact. It's kind of a habit by now. As I get a bit more comfortable, I might show you a few cool combos. Well, actually that was kind of one of them. You will combust and you get back out of range, so that he doesn't stun you with a spec. If you're in melee distance of Magister, he can actually stun you, which is kind of an anti-melee mechanic. By kind of I mean it straight up is. It's kind of annoying. In all honesty, I don't really think it should be a thing. We have enough anti-melee mechanics as is. One thing to actually watch and be wary of is when you're above 70% adrenaline or thereabouts, he can drain your adrenaline by 10%. So when you're about to sunshine, if you have an adrenaline potion bound, or you click it, he might drain your adrenaline. You might not actually sunshine, and you may use your adrenaline potion to go from 90% to 100% adrenaline, which is just a big waste. So it's good to keep watch on your adrenaline bar as you're about to sunshine, so that it doesn't really mess you over a bit too hard. And you can use escape to instantly walk. You can use escape to instantly walk combusts as well when you're not in walking distance. Generally should try and use wild magic and asphyxiate twice in your sunshines. I missed a tick there, my bad. But yeah, generally should try and use it twice in your sunshines, and then once between sunshines. That's each. There's my first wild magic. There's my asphyxiate. I could have done that earlier, and probably should have, if I was trying to get slightly better DPM. Didn't actually manage to Vuln, so I'm gonna do defensive so I can force Vuln in the middle of my rotation. I'll just face tank that, I don't mind, I can Excalibur. It will hit for 2k, mind you, so it does hurt a bit. I will make note of something else to be aware of with his asphyxiate move in a sec, when I can get some kind of leeway to do so. Okay, so if he does an asphyxiate move, if you stun him while he's doing it, he will start to auto attack inside it. I'm not sure if it's a bug or intended, it's probably a bug, but it does break his self stun, which means that he can actually auto attack within his animation, which he's not meant to. So that's actually something to kind of be aware of as a skill based item. That if he doesn't asphyxiate, you refrain from stunning him instantly. Like if I stunned him now, as I just did, and he was doing an asphyxiate, he would have, in fact, started auto-attacking his asphyxiate, and that's just extra damage you're taking for no reason. As I can think of more things as it goes, I will. That has a simple 5x5 radius. It's quite a small bomb radius. Nothing much to worry about. It's easily walked out of. Try to just stun him. I can rack. Okay, so his charge move when he charges at you. That can disable protection pairs, but that won't actually disable protection pairs unless you're not praying against magic. If you're praying against melee or you're pairing soul split, it will stop you from using protection pairs. I believe also when you're praying range, it will stop you from using protection pairs. So you can't protect melee, and using soul split will mean you can't flick back to protect magic easily. I believe that's a safeguard against bad soul split flicking, so it's an actual kind of in-depth mechanic, which is really cool. But just be aware of it, that it might stop you from soul split flicking and so on. So he just self-walked him there with his charge. As you can see, injured and can't use deflect curses because I was praying soul split and not against magic. If I was praying against magic, I could use them as I wish. Another thing to note if he's, say, on a threshold, each 50k hit points has kind of a cap. Using bleeds is pretty good, because it means it can just do a tiny bit of damage and phase him. Whereas, say, trying to use, I'm going to auto attack here. Whereas trying to use, oh, I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, so whereas trying to use, say, snapshot, the snapshot will get eaten. So if the snapshot would have hit 15k, it might hit something like 1k, simply because he had 1k hit points till he phased. So that would be a really bad time to use a just high burst ability that hits in one tick. Something like wild magic you can use across phases, it's not that big a deal. That charge hits really hard when he's low. He does gain a damage steroid when he's low. I shouldn't have used Sunshine. I was too busy talking, rather than actually paying attention to how many keys I had left. But yeah. So a big thing for Magister is actually bank time. The faster you can bank, the much better you will be off. Because if you save, say, 1 second per kill on banking, you might get an extra kill in an hour if you're getting 60 kills per hour. So it can actually be pretty massive, even though it doesn't seem like it, just a single second. If you do happen to stun him in the middle of his asphyxiate, you can just chain stun him with impact or, well, deep impact or asphyxiate. It will stop him from just wrecking face while he's in his asphyxiate. Sorry, I had to concentrate for a second there. Kind of a mechanically complex maneuver, considering my really bad keybinds. Didn't detonate, well, auto attack, detonate, dragon breath, no, auto attack, detonate, combust, escape. And that involves some out keybinds, which is kind of difficult to pull off when you're trying to also talk simultaneously. But yeah, that's among other things to consider. Dreadnoks help with you know, stunning him so that he keeps his auto attacking to a minimum, so he doesn't spawn minions on you. Really, you won't spawn minions unless your DPS is really lacking in general. If you're on a Berserker aura, it shouldn't really happen. If you're on Runic or something like that, it actually might. Because accuracy is kind of short at Magister. You do want to use pretty much the best gear you can for accuracy. As you can tell, I'm using a Reaper necklace just to increase my accuracy a bit. I'm also on Nihil because I can afford to be. I'm efficient enough in my food usage so that using a Nihil doesn't actually affect my kills in any way apart from increasing my DPM. If I was struggling for food, it might decrease my DPM, in which case having a Nihil might not be the best idea. But as it stands, I'm completely fine using it. But it's not always the best idea too if you're struggling on it. Another note, you just saw Magister do that. If he gets close to this pillar, he can charge away, just randomly. That's kind of an anti-cheese mechanic, so that you can't AoE Magister and the pillar, because as the fight goes on, unless you deal damage to the pillar or use a restore potion, Magister does drain your max hit points. So it was meant to be kind of DPS race, but the player does so much DPS that it trivializes the DPS race in some way. Where suddenly the player can just completely ignore damaging the pillar. But in the case that he couldn't, that would have been an anti-cheese mechanic. So that The player couldn't just say grab a scythe and AoE both the pillar and Magister at the same time. Now you may notice that escape is now off global cooldown as an ability, so is surge, just like Lady Dive. So you can now use those in some pretty cool combos. I might show you one of my favorites if I can pull it off at some point. So that would be one of my favorites, just escape under him. So I'll explain that in a few seconds. So I did an auto attack, detonate, combust, moved back one tick to escape under him while I was in my sunshine, so I didn't lose any ticks in walking him. Sadly, my dreadnought stunned him, so he couldn't move, but that would have instantly walked him, and then I'd use anticipation in while outside of my sunshine, so I don't lose a boosted ability. And then I will walk back into my sunshine, and I will auto attack plus an ability, so the auto attack and ability both get boosted, and I don't lose any damage. So that's a really cool combo, but you do have to get a good feel for the distance you are away from your enemy in order to do that. Ooh, this is actually kind of mentally taxing. Didn't expect it as much. Doesn't help that I'm tired. I'm stood outside of my sunshine entirely. What a wasted wild magic, am I right? Another benefit to using defensives is it does forcing an auto attack with defensive is in fact stronger than rack. God awful. I wanted to heal, but I was a bit late on that. But he was talking. Should probably shut up. Yeah, it is in fact stronger than rack. And it does build more adrenaline because you get a full ability and 2% adrenaline for the auto you force because of using that defensive. So there's that benefit. One thing you can do before you sunshine, so that he doesn't one thing you can do before you sunshine so that he doesn't drain your adrenaline unexpectedly is you can use impact just before you sunshine. That will stall him for one tick so that you can sunshine instantly and not have a chance of him draining your adrenaline. So that's a pretty good trick. The same can be done with ranged, melee, so on. But yeah, I'm doing my best to commentate. But yeah, I didn't fully finish explaining gear, but you just barely have about 100% accuracy with my current gear. So that's Nox Staff, Reaper Necklace, Nihil, Berserker Aura, being Maniacal, Affliction, Tier 99 Prayer. So some pretty high spec gear. You just about have about 100% accuracy. With a Nox Staff you would 100% have full on accuracy. But I haven't had best in slot magic gear forever. It's in fact my least geared up style. So yeah. You can use rack. You can use rack after deep impact. It will boost it, but you cannot use it after impact or asphyxiate. It won't manage to boost it, sadly. There we go. I managed to walk him. Fortunate. if you don't know why I managed to wild magic just now with 48% adrenaline, I actually did an auto attack. I forced an auto attack after a defensive on the same tick as using wild magic. So that meant I got 50% adrenaline on the same tick I sent wild magic out. So I actually had 50% by the time wild magic came. It's it's a weird tick order type thing. Rednip doing his best to sabotage my my combusts at the moment. And Volmed, okay. You also probably shouldn't stick as low HP as me sometimes, because it is just a slight bit dumb sometimes. Like, there's no two words about it. Like, I might stick at 1k HP for a long time and just sign. And it's just not very productive. And I should have used stronger abilities to finish him off earlier on so that he didn't prolong the fight. He loves prolonging the fight as much as he can. With asphyxiates restores me. As he stood there, he did actually drain my adrenaline, as I mentioned before. But I did manage to not drink my adrenaline potion by accident. I do have it bound alongside all my other keys I use for ultimates. So yeah, there's that point. So Dreadnips do actually deal damage themselves, so that's a plus, on top of which they do allow you to, well, use rack at boosted damage. So Dreadnips are in fact a DPS boost as well as a utility of stunning him, so you lose less food and you won't spawn the minions as much. The minions really hurt and they make your life miserable, because as the fight prolongs, your food heals less overall because you have less max HP. And the more you have to eat, the less adrenaline you have to deal damage with, and the less adrenaline you have to deal damage with, the more your corruption stacks go up. So I'm currently at 37%. The more damage he'll deal to you, the more you'll eat, the less damage you'll be dealing, and it's just a really bad cycle. But you want to avoid it if you can. If you're really struggling for food, right, so I'm currently praying there to get my ice rifle back up on its hit points, so that it doesn't die on me. It was really low. The bombs do damage your familiar. Be wary, you can actually kick bombs into your familiar if you didn't know. So there is that. And the timing on the asphyxiate is kind of consistent, so you should be able to get pretty good at mitigating it while soul splitting in between. That's probably the best way to get yourself into soul split flicking Magister's attacks in the first place. Just getting a feel for his pace on his asphyxiates, and then you'll get a taste for his auto attacks, and you'll eventually just be able to smoothly soul split flick without any problems. Having a good mouse does really help. It does help in a lot of PVM overall. Now I'm just going to res, because it would hurt otherwise. There's no point taking all that extra damage. As far as Revolution, I wouldn't ever really recommend Revolution. It's kind of training wheels. You should get off it as soon as you can. It's just really not that great of a habit. because you have less control, you have less kind of depth in your DPS rotations, you're paying less attention to how you're DPSing, which means that you will get lower DPM just in general. And I do find it subjectively more fun to use full manual. So as far as when Magister does special attacks, it's every 3 of his auto attacks. He'll use a special attack, and that's entirely random for the most part. He has his kind of auxiliary attacks, which include his resonance, freedom, and his siphon. So he'll siphon your adrenaline, as I mentioned. You can actually avoid that asphyxiate by running out of range of the attack entirely, or if you're meleeing, then you can avoid it by running into well, dealing damage, melee damage within melee distance of him. Well, I'm not sure how you deal melee damage otherwise than being close quarters with him, apart from, say, an odd crackling. It is somewhat difficult to concentrate, I'll be honest. Especially considering I really am short on sleep. Okay, so that really shouldn't have happened. I did try and escape on tick, but as you saw, he did still stun me, which was a bit annoying. I did really try and escape, but oh well, what can you do? Sometimes it just doesn't respond appropriately. It might be because I dropped an input because I'm recording. So my PC just literally dropped it. You can also force vulns alongside your detonates. I haven't explained how you do that, so just real quick, you can channel the detonate for at least 3 seconds, and then if you have an auto attack keybound to your action bar, then you can press that auto attack and then detonate, and then a basic ability all in the same tick in that order, and they will all go off on the same tick. Well, they do have to be on the same tick, otherwise your auto attack will cancel your detonate, in which case you're losing damage. And if they're not in that order, then they won't all go off. If a basic ability is before detonate or the auto attack, then that'll cancel your detonate, and your auto attack swing timer won't let you auto attack. So you'll essentially just cancel everything and just do your basic ability. If you do your detonate first, once again it cancels your swing timer on your auto attack. It won't let you auto attack. So auto attack has to come first, then detonate. So it's not the channel is not cancelled, or rather interrupted, and then your basic ability, or not necessarily basic ability, it can be any ability, but basic ability generally is oftentimes what you use, something like Dragon Breath. You can now use Combust with the introduction of Escape. I escaped poorly there. Okay, that's one thing that really gets me sometimes. Luck of the Dwarves, when it's bound, has a miscellaneous teleport, or a miscellanea. So, especially when you're meleeing, if he stuns you, you can, when you're trying to ult, he can just force teleport you. So when I'm meleeing, I just don't use Luck of the Dwarves, even though it's essentially a 10% increase in money per hour. It's just too much of a pain in the ass. But yeah, so look at the dwarves. I use it simply because it's a big money boon, and I'm too lazy to main Asylum Surgeon Ring or Ring of Death as I should. I'm just too lazy. That's the only reason behind it. I really should be using it instead. As you see, I ran out of his range and cancelled his asphyxiate while trying to walk my combust. It will also sometimes just kill your dread as well, walking that far away, so be mindful of that. But yeah, if you trigger your look at Dwarves Keybind while it's already equipped, you will just teleport to Miscellanea and you will lose that key and whatever time you invest in trying to get that kill. I don't really expect any great kills per hour currently. The most I've gotten with a Noxious staff with this exact setup is has been how many? 64. I would have drank my adrenaline potion by accident there. That really messed me over. So Siphon can really be quite annoying. You can use Sacrifice as kind of a dummy ability. I half expected that to hit me, so I just healed in case because I don't have a sign. But I did get just a tick before it would have hit me, so that's pretty good. That bomb, even if you escape on the same tick, it will still hit you. Can be kind of annoying, but just be aware of it and it just won't happen to you. So there's that. I'm just using Corruption Blast before I go into my Sunshine, because they don't get boosted by Sunshine, so I try and get the most out of them I can. And then I can use my other abilities, which will be off cooldown for extra damage, so on. Just tiny little things. They're not huge, but they do make a bit of a difference in the end. It's kind of those small optimizations that get you eventually noticeably more DPM. It's like saving a tick by forcing Vuln on the tick you attack in. That can save you, over the course of a trip, a good few seconds, which is, in the end, a kill or two. So that's where you start beginning to think like, there's no way you can do that much damage. But there are a lot of places you just save little bits of time. As you can see, he charged me with Magic Prayer on, and I can flick as I like. As I said, it's kind of pray flick punishment. So you need to be good at pray flicking, or he will essentially just rip off your prayer. So it's kind of a nice mechanic in that sense. That does take some skill, or some semblance of skill. I let myself auto attack there, so I could use my Wild Magic earlier. So I had I had more than 20 seconds left in my Sunshine. Cooldown of Wild Magic is 20 seconds, so that I could use it again by the end of Sunshine to get more damage into my Sun. So it's just really small things, like see Sunshine's running out, I can use my Wild Magic again just before it runs out. So a lot of DPS is just little small optimizations. You won't really get to know them if you're using Revolution. And you won't be able to, or rather it'll be a lot hard to get into doing all the little cool fun things, like escaping out of combusts and things like that. I'm unsure if I could ever recommend full manual enough. In the end, you might start off on doing less damage, as often happens when you're learning new things. But once you get good, you'll start doing more damage. It's kind of a procrastination type deal. You're happy where you're at, you're happy with the status quo, but in reality you would get a lot better in the end if you weren't complacent in sitting on Revolution. Now, that's not a shot at anyone. If you just like a chilled back playstyle and you don't want to actually optimize your DPS, that's cool. But if you want to get good kills per hour and avoid some really bad moments, especially at Magister with a very DPS oriented boss, I would recommend full manual really heavily. Any bit of extra accuracy you can get, like super overloads, of course those are good too. It might sometimes be really difficult to see exactly what I've done. So sometimes, like there, I did a defensive into Vuln into Combust. Well, at the start of the kill I did a defensive into Vulnerability, into Combust, into Escape, for example. Or Combust Walk Under Him, Escape. Correction, sorry. So I'll do my best to kind of point things out like that. The things I miss, you may have to pay attention to yourself. I can't catch everything, some of it just feels really natural to me. I missed a tick entirely, or missed. Sorry, I hit a keybind early by a tick, which is actually my asphyxiate keybind. That didn't go at all, so I just stood there doing nothing like an idiot for a good few seconds. So don't do that. That's a good tip as well, mate. So full manual, it may be a bit cluttered at first. You may find you struggle to pay attention to what the boss is doing as well as what you're doing, which may get you killed sometimes. That's why I'd actually recommend practicing it for Slayer. People view Slayer as a very AFK thing, but it doesn't have to be. It's actually really fun to try and optimize your rotations in Slayer, and it's a good practice field for full manual. So you don't have to practice at bosses where you actually have a risk of death. Okay. And then once it becomes natural, you will just be able to pay attention to the boss without having to really think much about what keybinds you're hitting. Things to note about Magister I haven't mentioned yet. He is not immune to poison. I am bring weapon poison. It is a big buff to your damage, and because of that, I have also brought Cinderbanes. With my current gear, I don't really need any more accuracy, so any Bandle's Book, Scrimshaw of Magic is just bad. Scrimshaw of Magic is worse than Scrimshaw of Elements anyway, but that just having high accuracy makes it double bad. They do cost a lot of money, so if they don't give you a big benefit, you may well want to hold off on them. But if you do find Magister does tend to spawn minions a bit more often than you'd like, a Scrimshaw might just give you enough to push you over the edge so that he stops, and that might result in actually a lot more kills per hour and a lot less frustration. Just want to resonance that. No, he can actually damage you when he's got 0 hit points. If he hits 0 hit points either on the tick or the tick before he charges at you, he can damage you. So if you're low hit points and he does that, be aware he might be able to kill you. So that you don't suddenly think that's bullshit, because kind of it is, but at the same time, if you're aware of it, there shouldn't be much of a reason to die to it. I was fine to sunshine there. I still have another key. You will sometimes zone out and miss little things like that and just lose out on 30 seconds of sunshine. So that's inevitable, it's human error, but you can do your best to minimize those chances by paying attention. I'll stand outside of sunshine for as long as I can, because maniacal boosts bleeds while sunshine doesn't, and being inside sunshine cancels the bonus to bleeds, while staying outside sunshine I believe does not. If I'm wrong, if while you still have sunshine up but are outside of it, your bleeds don't get boosted, then my bad, but I use the defensive to be able to try and stall outside of sunshine as much as possible before I have to use an ability that benefits from sunshine. I use the dark bow simply because I'm lazy. That's the only reason. How long have we got? 18 minutes left. And of course I shouldn't be forgetting to turn on my scrimshaw, hopefully. I just slashed pretty hard. So Magister will always charge 1 square south of you. It never changes. So you can run north, and all you have to do is run north for 1 tick, 2 tiles, and he won't hit you. It's a 5x5 AoE. But if you do run south, you do have to run south for 2 ticks, which increases the chance of you getting hit by a lot. If you have a slower reaction time, something to be noted. If you run to the side, you still have to run 3 tiles, so you still have to run for 2 ticks. So same thing. The easiest and safest way to avoid that charge is running north. That's if you do struggle with hit points. I should have gotten that kill and not extended it. I accidentally clicked on that pillar a bit early, which is my bad. I don't know how many kills per hour this video will be, but I think that 4 tick auto attacking without it, the highest you should be able to get is probably about 69 maybe, if you're really good and really sweating it and you don't mess anything up. Probably about 69, no more than 70 I'd say in the current state of the game. Probably about 67 comfortably if you're good. It's just kind of a direct upgrade from a Noxious Staff of about 5%, which is about 3 kills. So 64 to 67 is a pretty reasonable expectation. As far as if you don't have max guild, you will find your kills per hour suffer a lot. If you have 115 Slayer, you should honestly probably have max guild. If you don't, that's unfortunate, but at the same time, the best way to bypass that I thought of so far is, give me a sec, is bring a yak full of keys, and then bring a ring of death. So if you die, you don't lose anything that's in your familiar with a ring of death. And that extends your trips so that you don't have to run constantly back and forth to resupply, because the limiting factor would be your inventory space rather than the amount of food you can take oftentimes. That would extend the amount of kills you can get. And if you don't have max guild, I couldn't really recommend a Nihil. It just takes too long to bank. It's way too far away. So yeah, I messed that one up. Oh, I'll forego walking that one. I completely botched that. I don't even want to know. Turns out I hit a reprisal. I'll probably hit the hay and get some sleep after this. So I accidentally stunned him as he started it. So I did my best to keep the stun going with deep impact instantly after. So as I say, something to note. Oh yeah, there you go. As I was about to say, I want to kill him as soon as possible. At that point, he loves using Restore Me far too often there. So I want to kill him before he got that off, and I killed him on the tick just before that actually happened. So that was pretty good. That's one thing about Dreadnips. They can oftentimes screw you out of your combustibles, but they are overall a DPS buff and a good utility buff, and especially if you're on Reaper Necklace. Magister being stunned just reduces the amount of damage you take, which can be a pretty big help at times, especially if you're struggling on food. If you find you're struggling on food a bit too much, you might actually deal more damage on Amulet of Souls. Because if you find you're having to neuter your DPS rotations or eat too much because you're taking too much damage from a Reaper Necklace, then you might actually start dealing more damage on an Amulet of Souls, because you won't have to kind of eat food, which lowers your adrenaline. For one, eating food lowers your adrenaline. I think everyone knows that. Which means less thresholds, less damage, less ults. Brewing up, here you don't have 100% accuracy oftentimes. If you do brew up, chances are you're definitely not going to get 100% accuracy. So you'd be losing DPS from there. Just think to note. So brewing up, while it's a pretty good idea, because they aren't affected by your lower heal cap from lowered maximum life points. They do lower your stats, which does mean less damage. And then you might actually find yourself distracted and soul split flicking, trying to maintain your life points instead of focusing on getting a good DPS rotation. So Amulet of Souls won't necessarily be all that much worse. But a Reaper Neck is, in theory, best. Now I let myself auto attack there once again for the reason of getting enough adrenaline. To World Magic earlier on. Poison's about to run out, just reapply it. Simple thing. You'll find melee really does struggle here. If you don't have his Hour Scud Sword. It's a pretty insane requirement for a boss, as a DPS dummy. As far as GP per hour, you might expect at around 60 kills per hour. Should be up to around 60. No, sorry. As far as GP per hour, I'm all over the place. Okay, I think we've covered it. Bloody hell. Okay, as far as GP per hour, that you can expect from this boss, about 15 mil per hour. It does depend on prices. It can go up to about as much as 20 million per hour. So it's a sizable chunk of money. It's not that bad a boss as people like to make it out. It just had a bad rep for when it came out, and rightfully so. It was pretty tragic when it came out, but at the moment it has some depth to it, and it can be enjoyable as a kind of DPS test dummy fight. I would recommend having perk gear. It is far too much of a DPS buff to give up. Also, as far as foretaking goes and all that, well, that will in effect get removed from the game eventually, as far as what we can tell. But I wouldn't necessarily even recommend it, even if it weren't. Simply because oftentimes, where people focus on foretaking, they might be able to get more damage into their rotations from simply paying more attention to their ability usage. And little niche things that they could be doing instead. I'm doing really dreadfully, honestly. There we go. And screwed me out of another combust. That's fine. Ice Knife is somewhat healthy still. Still good. That's what I meant by wasting like 10 seconds of sun, 20 seconds of sun. My bad. So this will be our last inventory. Oh, I'm doing, in fact, so badly, it's pretty insane. Just focus for a second as I recollect my thoughts. As far as what style is best for Magister, will free work. I already have a ranged video, a bad one mind you. It was post-release, gear wasn't very optimized, not post-release, post-buff, post-nerf, sorry. Post-nerf to his defense. So the setup was based around his previous defense, so it included Bandless Book, things like that. You can get around 62 kills per hour of ranged, as it stands. So that one fell quite a bit short of optimal. I might put up a melee one if people like this one as well. But melee has a fair few more caveats than magic or ranged. melee does suffer if you do not have a ZGS. Your kills per hour do go down a pretty decent amount. Simply because Zerk is neutered by the fact that you do have a 25% damage buff on top of everything else. So you do bump into the damage cap pretty often, which essentially just lowers your average damage per hit inside Zerk. As well as melee is styled to magic. Magister uses magic. It's not a big discovery. Exactly, is it? Okay. But melee does have Vamp Scrim, which is kind of nice at times to make up for it. As well as Quake as an on-demand defense debuff. So you'll find yourself, you might find you get an okay bit more accuracy. The one problem being you do have to stay at Noxious Scythe range unless you do want to get stunned in melee distance, which is a bit of a pain. But that's just how that cookie crumbles. One thing you can do, if you're struggling for food in particular, is you can use your double bleeds just before you asphyxiate. So you can then soul split camp through your bleeds while you're stunning him and you asphyxiate. The same goes with going impact into deep impact. It can just help give you that edge in healing. Bleeds do heal a lot in Soul Split because Soul Split does have healing soft caps. Larger hits heal for less relatively to the damage they deal. So bleeds do heal a lot for how much damage they deal. That's why you might find it worthwhile to Soul Split camp during them with your asphyxiate. Okay. See, that's where I used impact to try and make sure that he wouldn't be able to drain me of my adrenaline if I were to sunshine. On that same tick, he did siphon me, so it's either he gets stunned long enough for me to use sunshine, or he siphons you on the same tick, and I don't sunshine because I don't have enough adrenaline at that point. So using impact before sunshine is, in general, just really good. It's a really good practice for Magister in particular. Now I'm not afraid to get in his melee distance because my dreadnought just stunned him. So I'm not afraid to get stunned as such. I can combust into, well, ideally if he threw it closer to himself, after being able to escape from that in one fell swoop while working my combust. So you have time for just one more kill before we're completely out of gas. By gas I mean aura. You might see at the end of the skill just how bad it is to fight him without an aura in terms of splash escape. If you'd like to in fact see a full-on, like full-blown condensed guide in guide format rather than there we go, last core of the kill, then do say if you found this interesting. If you prefer this format compared to a guide, do also tell me, but I'll do my best. I'm sort of short on time overall, so there is that. I will check how many kills per hour this was, but yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed that. Just looking at the damage chart, it was probably about 60, 59, not counting any familiar damage or anything like that, I believe. It might be a bit more. I'll check rune metrics. Yeah, hopefully this was informative, and hopefully you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.